Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Meghan. I've enjoyed getting to know Meghan over the last year and have learned a lot from her as well. Thanks to Charlie for inviting me here. Thanks for having me at Next Jump. So I want to talk a little bit today about entrepreneurship. And everyone in this room is an entrepreneur. So if you're at a startup, you're an entrepreneur. You're essentially helping to build something out of where once there was nothing. So if you chose not to take that cushy job and you're going to come work at a startup, that means you're an entrepreneur. So I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. And when I think about entrepreneurship, and especially at Next Jump, you can't really start a slideshow without a dude jumping off a cliff, right? So I like this quote that I'll talk about in a minute that says entrepreneurship is really like jumping off of a cliff and building your airplane on the way down. And I think that's absolutely true. If you're out raising money, you have a certain amount of money to spend to try to get big very fast, but you know that you have jumped off of that cliff and you better build that airplane before you hit the ground. If you're self-capitalizing, you know you have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of time you can put in building this business. So that quote's actually from Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn. Entrepreneurship is jumping off a cliff and assembling a plane on the way down. But I started to think about that, and I started thinking about, so much of when you're in business, you talk about, that this is combative. We're gonna destroy the competition. We're gonna collapse the marketplace. Business is war. Business is combat. People talk about how much runway do they have remaining, how much money do I have left in our account, how much time do I have left to be able to do this. We talk about I'm going to light the afterburner on this business. This sale is in the glide pattern, and it occurred to me that there's an awful lot that has crept into the culture of entrepreneurship that has come from the military. But when I think about my experience with the military, I realize that there's a lot more than just sort of the words and the rah-rah, sort of combative sort of approach to this. There's a lot of really critical things that I brought into building my company. And so I want to talk a little bit about everything that I learned about entrepreneurship I learned in the U.S. military. So I'll talk a little bit about me very briefly. I have been an entrepreneur since I was very young. I really did have a lemonade stand, and I sold lemonade out on the golf course to thirsty folks. Then I figured out that if I parked myself on a water hole and guys would put the balls right into the water, and then my brother and I would go and pull them out of the water and then sell them on the side afterwards the very next day. So we did a lot of that. Then I started a lawn cutting business, cut an awful lot of lawns, $10 a lawn, had more money than any of the kids in the neighborhood, and they all said, well, how do I get in on that action as well? And I said, well, you can cut lawns for $10. I'll give you my accounts, and you'll just pay me $2, and you'll take $8. So that was a pretty sweet deal. Then I started learning on, a lot of you young folk probably don't know what this is. This is an early computer. This is what I learned to program on, the early Apple II, and built some really awesome stuff. Learned software at a very, very early age. That's a disk drive over on the right, in case you're wondering. Later on in college, I started my first company, and I had worked for Apple for a number of years, and I started what was really one of the very first personal information managers, and in the early 90s, I sold that company to Apple Computer. So for a guy right out of college, that was a lot of fun, with three other buddies that we put together a company that we ended up selling to Apple. Then I went into the military. I grew up in this is actually me back when I was young and sexy. No longer. So I grew up in a military family. My dad was a military pilot. My grandfather was a military pilot. My uncles are flyers as well. And there was a big service component to the idea that you should do something of service. I also went to school on an ROTC scholarship. And after the military, I've done a number of different things, involved in a number of different startups in various product and engineering and operational roles. And I started a company a little over 3 years ago, almost 3.5 years ago, called Smartling. And very, very briefly, what Smartling does is we are a translation management platform. So we help companies that are going global or want to be global and have to manage lots of content on their websites, their web applications, their mobile apps, their video, their business documents in 5, 10, 20 different languages across their entire corporate digital ecosystem. It's really difficult to do that. So we've got a web-based system that can pull lots of disparate content into the system from different sources, put it into a translation workflow, provide really high-quality professional human translation, the right terminology management, all the proper workflows, and then put it back where it needs to go. Put it back into your website, back into your content management system, back into your mobile app, back into your source code repository, back into into your documents. We can do all that and all the analytics that are associated with it. There's a second part of our product, which is called our Global Delivery Network, which is literally a global network of data centers positioned around the world. And so when companies come to us and say, hey, I actually need to have my website or my web application in French and Spanish and Chinese, it's not enough to just translate that content. You really need an infrastructure that allows you to deploy a multilingual experience around the world that's fast, responsive, secure, and high uptime. So we've built that for our customers as well. And the types of customers that we work with are the leading technology companies like Spotify and Dropbox, Tesla, Vimeo, Path, SurveyMonkey, Foursquare, TED, Uber, and so on. As well as many of the biggest Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies like John Deere, Embraer Aircraft, Rome Semiconductor, Telefonica, Sony, Nokia, Rakuten. Back to this guy. So what did I do in the military, and what did I learn from that experience? So I flew a couple different airplanes. I was a military pilot. This is one of the airplanes I flew. It's called a T-38. It's a very fun, very slick, very cool, super fast, supersonic trainer aircraft. Supersonic meaning it literally does go faster than the speed of sound. You can get a sense of what it looks like from the top. You've got typically two pilots in it, one in the back and one in the front. And yes, you literally are that close as you're flying next to another airplane on this. That's what it looks like from the bottom. So I flew that for a little while. Then I moved on to this beast, which was awesome. This is a C-130, and this is an airplane that flies low and fast and drops things out of the back. So we drop paratroopers, we drop tanks, we drop Humvees, we also land on dirt strips, and the whole idea of this mission, this airplane, is there are some places that we as a country want to get into and deliver a whole bunch of paratroopers, a whole bunch of tanks, a whole bunch of Humvees, and there's just not a runway there and not a place that we're going to necessarily land. So this airplane's job is to deliver all those goods. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's humanitarian relief. And we need to put that someplace where there's not a beautiful airport with air traffic control bringing us in. And so my job is to fly low and fast below the radar and then drop those things where they need to go or land on the dirt. Here's a couple pictures. That's what it looks like with a heavy equipment load coming out of the back of the airplane. You can see that there's a parachute that actually pulls whatever you're delivering out of the airplane, and then there's another parachute that puts it down on the ground. This is what it looks like landing on a dirt strip. We literally landed on grass and dirt when there weren't runways available. This is what it looks like sort of taxiing around a dirt strip. There's me with a bunch of guys. We were just putting together an exercise. We did a lot of work in Europe, in Bosnia and Kosovo. This is me working with the guy on my right was the guy on the Army side who was putting together this exercise for a whole bunch of paratroopers. This is what they look like when it's just like the movies. You stand up and you hook up and you shuffle back, and then you jump out the back of the door right here, right over the target. So that's what that looks like. This is what it looks like when guys jump out of the back of the airplane. This is what it looks like from inside the back of the airplane. You can see there's the four guys right there, and that's what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4 guys and gals jumping out of that. This is me flying on night vision goggles, so where it is dark and it is all of your instruments are dark, and you wear the helmet when you put night vision goggles on the top of this so that you can see what's going on, and that your airplane is completely dark and it's very difficult to see when it's coming. This is in Kosovo. We set up a forward operating base here in Kosovo and delivered a lot of the goods here, working with the Army here to set up their forward base. This is in either Saudi or Kuwait, I can't remember. This is us delivering some really pretty powerful munitions. If you have any idea what that bomb actually does, this is what it does right there. That's the after effect. This is humanitarian. Sorry. That's the after effect. This next one, which may be coming up, is humanitarian relief operations in Africa. We did a ton of work in Africa and different parts of Europe, where you literally are landing again on a dirt strip because the infrastructure just isn't there. So one of the most important things I learned is if you're going to make a really cool video, you got to have some awesome Van Halen to go with it, right? And this also tells you when this video was made. But here's a really quick sort of 3-minute video, and the folks that are remote can fire up the YouTube video here real quick. So this was a big training exercise, and I'll just kind of talk through it real quick here. So this is a big training exercise, and this is really just perfecting the art of airdrop, of tactical airlift delivery. And so this will be about 3 minutes to kind of show what we did with this airplane. That's me up on the left, starting up the airplane. bunch of training exercises. This is over about a 6-week period, just tons and tons of video of really trying to perfect the craft of taking off, landing, and delivering paratroopers and heavy equipment on target where it needs to be on time. So the whole mission here is to fly low and fast and fly below the radar and get where you need to go and then put this out here. And by the way, once this is over, I'm going to talk about the real learnings from this. Pardon me? Stop screaming.
I have it queued over here.
You have it queued on this side?
I have it queued over here.
Yeah, let's do that then. Yeah.
You have to stop the WebEx.
No, I don't think we need to stop the WebEx.
Sure.
Let's start it right about here. Great. Thank you. If you want to buy some Android phones, they're on sale now. Thank you. So this is actually doing a bunch of training in Texas and a variety of southern states. And so we had cameras set up to really figure out exactly how to really perfect every aspect of the mission here. And so this is flying at about 300 feet and about 300 miles an hour. It may not look quite that fast, but it's moving pretty fast if you were observing it from the ground. It's a crew of 5 people. So one of the big challenges here is you're flying a big airplane, but you're also managing 4 other people at the same time. That gives you a little bit of a sense that this airplane's moving pretty fast. It looks like a big airplane, but it flies like a little one. It's super maneuverable. So this is coming in over the target. You can see the back of the airplane is opening up here. You can see what this looks like as we kick some stuff out of the back. So out comes the parachute, and that pulls everything out, and that also deploys the bigger parachute that brings the equipment down to the ground. This could be food, it could be munitions, it could be a tank, it could be a Humvee. This is what it looks like from the inside. You do not want to be standing behind that when it comes out of the airplane. This is what it looks like when it hits the target. Night vision goggles, and you can see it really is pitch black. The only thing you can see is the infrared on the camera here. Everything else is pitch black. No one's going to see you coming, and you can see that if you look at my co-pilot up on the right here, you'll see he's got night vision goggles on his helmet. And this is just hundreds and hundreds of trying to land on the dime. Trying to land on the exact same spot every single time, because you're landing on with maybe a dirt strip, maybe a small road, maybe a small stadium someplace, and landing long like that is not good. This is what it looks like when paratroopers come out of the airplane from the inside. So they're looking for the green light, just like the movie. 3, 2, 1, green light. And then this is what these guys look like when they go out of here. About 64 18-year-olds, armed to the teeth, jumping out of the airplane. That's what it looks like from the outside. It's pretty awesome. Finally landed on a dirt strip. good. Thanks. And then we'll switch back over to the WebEx, please. Is that pretty cool?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so what did I learn? So I want to talk about specifically how do you do something like that? How do you get a team motivated behind that? How do you apply that to entrepreneurship? So I want to talk about this quote. This quote to me is really one of the defining quotes of entrepreneurship. A good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Who knows who said that besides John? John, right? David, sorry, besides David. Who knows who said that? David, all right. Patton. That guy right there, General Patton. So let's talk a little bit about what that really means. Let's talk about this airplane that we talked about a minute ago. This airplane flies faster than the speed of sound. You could use a number of 600 miles an hour on this. That means 10 miles a minute. And when you're learning to fly this airplane, one of the things that happens is you typically hear an air traffic controller say, hey, go ahead and fly to this particular point in space. And you've got this instrument over here to figure out where it is. It's a very simple airplane. There's no radar, there's no GPS, there's no fancy stuff. And you've got to figure out what's the heading I'm turning to. And a lot of young pilots will go, well, let me find the exact right thing here. Right, I'm going to turn to a heading of, it's probably about 200, let's call it 198 degree, maybe it's 197 degrees. They're trying to really figure out the math on this thing to figure out exactly where they're going. It takes about a minute. Meanwhile, your airplane's moving at about 10 miles a minute. So by the time you fly in that direction for 10 miles and then fly back for 10 miles, you've wasted 20 miles of space here, all right? And so generally the instructor pilots will say, hey, where's that spot? It's right there, it's right over my shoulder. Why don't you turn your airplane and get going in that direction and then fine tune it and then figure out whether it's a 198 or a 197. That applies to entrepreneurship in a very, very big way. So it's the idea of get a 70% solution and then start executing. Get a 70% solution and start executing. You don't know what the market is going to think about your product. You don't know what they're going to think about your service. You got a pretty good idea and you think it might be pretty good. But the fastest way to figure out whether the market likes what you're offering and whether they're going to buy your product or service is put it out there. And if they buy it, or they give you feedback on it, or they don't buy it, that's valuable. Then you can make adjustments from there. And what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they wait until it's perfect. They wait until it's perfect. Let me tell you something. It's never going to be perfect. It's good. Is it good enough? And so when you start to think about good today, perfect tomorrow, then you start to change your thinking of, is it good enough? Is it good enough for me to put it out to the market and get real feedback from people who will critique it, people who might buy it, people who might not buy it. And then the discussion starts to become, is it good enough for me to put it out there? Not necessarily something I'm super proud of, but good enough that I can get feedback and then work from there and adjust it from there. But I want to talk about, and some people, it's the idea of let's throw the spaghetti at the wall. Many of the entrepreneurs have seen read the Lean Startup books, which is a very similar concept of do something lean, do something agile, get things out there, and then get real feedback on it. But I want to talk about Patton again. So David, do you remember what the actual real quote was? Because I didn't quite have that quote quite right. Do you remember this one? On the quote of a good plan is better than a perfect plan tomorrow? Maybe not.
Yeah, it probably has some swear words.
It probably does. It probably does. So it's a good plan today, violently executed, is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. And I really like this concept because how do you do violent execution as an entrepreneur? What that really means is how are you faster and better and more disruptive in the things that you're doing where your competition can't keep up with you? Let me give some examples from my company. I have half of my technology team here in New York. I have half of my technology team in Europe. I see you've got about 4 different offices here. And as a result of that, we run a nearly 24-hour development cycle. So we can do twice as much work as my competitors in a daily cycle. 24 hours a day, we are coding. About 22 hours a day, we are coding. So when we finish our work here in New York, we pass it over to our team in Europe. When they finish their work in the afternoon or the evening, they pass it over to us. There's a little bit of overhead with communication, but this allows us to stay way ahead of our competitors. The other thing that we do is we have to maintain a network of 4 nines uptime, 99.99% uptime. That means that our software is up and running all for about a few minutes every single month. And yet, I want to be able to deploy new capabilities all the time. So we've invested in something that's called continuous delivery or continuous deployment. And without getting too detailed into this, what's neat about this is this means that we have invested in software and processes, and I think you guys may be doing some similar types of things, that allow us to safely and rigorously and in a disciplined way be able to deploy new updates to the internet about 20 times a day. So about 20 times a day, we will deploy a new bug fix, a new optimization. We might move this button over here, or we might release a completely major new feature that all of our customers can get a hold of. We do this 20 times a day, 400 times a month. Our competitors are doing this once a month, once every 3 months, every couple weeks. It's very difficult to keep up. That's the violent execution about this. It's how do you do something and put it out there immediately and do it continuously. So the other thing when I think about this, the other thing I like about the military, and this will be a little bit of, I'll start out with a little bit of philosophy here, and then I'll move into a different direction. This is something called the OODA Loop. And the OODA Loop is something that as strategists and as tacticians we would talk about a lot. It's OODA, and what it stands for is observe, orient, decide, and act. And in a military context, and look, the military's job is policy by another means, right? It's policy by another means, and many times a big part of that is to break things, right? So what this really means is, let's suppose that we're in a conflict with someone and we blow up their bridge. Well, what happens? The enemy then takes a look at this and they observe it. They go, hey, they just blew up our bridge. I wonder what that means to me. And so they start to orient themselves around this. What does that mean? Does it mean I can't get my troops over that bridge? Does it mean that my civilians are going to be really unhappy with me as a leader, that I can't keep that bridge up and running? I wonder what that means to my operation and to how my culture and how my community is going to feel about me as a leader. I better decide what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take all my troops over to that other bridge over there. That's what I'm going to do. And so I'll take that action and take my troops over to that other bridge. But meanwhile, we've already blown up that other bridge. If you can get inside of your competition, your enemy's OODA loop, it becomes paralyzing. If everything that you're doing, they're looking at, thinking about, what does that mean for me? Making a decision about, okay, how am I going to deal with that? And before they can even take action on that, you've done something else. You've done something else that's going to cause them to go, wait, what does that mean to me? What does that mean? How am I going to take action on that? And then you do something else. It's extremely paralyzing. So again, back to violent execution, this is the kind of thing that makes your competitors go, I don't really know what to do at this point. I guess I'll just keep shipping code once every 3 months and hope it works out. So that's very, very powerful. And I think the last part of strategy is another quote that I like, is no plan survives first contact with the enemy. It's very similar to the idea of get a 70% plan and start executing. Because all the planning you're doing is not going to be, it's not going to turn out the way you planned it. Here's a very famous battle plan, the Battle of Waterloo. How'd that work out, David? Not so well, right? Yes.
Who you're talking
for the
about.
people, exactly, yes. For the people that wrote this particular plan.
Yeah.
So let's have a backup plan, right? Let's have a backup plan. Let's talk about what that looks like. And one of the things that I like is this concept of watching out for unknown unknowns. And you've probably heard this before, but from Rumspell. But this is something that the military is particularly good at. And it's the idea, it's a little silly here, but it's the idea that there are known knowns. These are things that you know. I know stuff. I know what's going to happen. I know this. It's things I know. There are also things that are known unknowns. Those are things like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen when I get there. How many people are going to be there? How many troops are going to be there? Is this gun going to be on there? Are these guys going to be there in time when I get there? I know what the unknowns could be. I know them, and I can plan around them. Then you've got other things that are a little bit more complex, which are unknown knowns. These are things that you know it, but you don't realize how it may impact your operation right now. But when it happens, you'll be able to go, oh, right. I remember that guy told me the thing over here, and I got to take care of that. I can bring that knowledge into what I'm doing. The one that is devastating is the unknown unknowns, things that you don't know, and you have no idea how to think about them. And there's a really great book, if you haven't read it, called The Black Swan. And the Black Swan is the impact of the highly improbable. A black swan being an event that When it happens, you think, how in the world did that happen, and why didn't we think about that? But then after the fact, you think, well, it was so obvious. It was so obvious, and it has a massive impact. And 9/11 is really one of those examples that's probably near and dear to all the New Yorkers here of the Black Swan. In the book, he talks about a black swan, and he illustrates it with the life of a turkey on a farm, who every day of his life has lived this life of bliss, where these humans come and feed the turkey every day and take care of this turkey every day for many, many years. And then on one cold day in November, an unspeakable act happens that no one ever predicted or thought about. And that's really what a black swan is. So how do we prevent those things? How do we prevent those? And how do you take a big, big organization and get everyone aligned around, find the right plan, get a 70% solution, start executing, be creative to think about, gosh, what if this crazy thing would happen, this unknown, and how do we prevent against that? Is there a competitor that we should be buying, that if somebody else bought that company, that could be a real huge problem for us? So there's this notion of commander's intent, and what it really says is it set really high level goals. I know you guys do this here. I've talked to Charlie and Meghan enough about this. But the military concept is one called commander's intent. It's really high-level goals. It's not going to get down into, hey, I need you to ship this software. Who are the engineers here? Who are the engineers? A couple of you guys, right. I need you to ship this software, but here's the way I want you to write your SQL queries, and here's the language I want you to use for this, and I want you to deploy it to this server over here. That's not the best way to do it. That's probably going to annoy you, right? The better way to do it is to set a much higher level goal. And so as the CEO of the company, we set goals like this. One of the goals that we have in our company, and we've got 5 of them every quarter, less than a handful. I want to be able to count them on one hand. 5 of them that everybody in the company knows. One of them is, I want to ship a self-service version of our product by X date, by a particular date. Everyone in the company knows that. So I've set that at the high level goal. My product managers then can figure out exactly what the features are that are going into self-service. My marketers can figure out how are we going to market that to get it out to the marketplace, get people to sign up. My developers can figure out what's the appropriate coding technologies we're going to use, what's the appropriate implementation to be able to do that. My controller is thinking about how we're going to pay for that and what credit card processing. But I don't need to get into the details. Now, I do get into the details and I want to understand more about it. But the beautiful part about this is if I set a very high level goal, and then at a lower level there are objectives, and at the lower level all the way down to the end, to the person who just showed up for work today, if you know that that's what we're doing, you can make smart decisions about what should you be doing today. And you guys do a lot of this stuff already. So, and there's probably something as part of your Next Jump University that you guys have a name and talk about it. But commander's intent is what they call it in the military, and it's the idea of set high level goals, and then let everyone in the company understand them and make the smart decisions around that. Small changes have a big impact. This is so important, and Charlie and Meghan and I were just talking about a part of this earlier today. But here's a quick one from my flying days. If I'm 60 miles out from an airfield or from a target or something like that, and I'm a mile off course, so this is showing that I'm a mile off course here, and I want to get my airplane on target here, all I need to do is make a 1 degree change in my heading, a very tiny change, almost imperceptible, and just hold that. And in 60 miles, in about 6 minutes, I'm going to be over the target. It's a tiny change, almost imperceptible. But dropping 64 paratroopers a mile off target on somebody's home, that's probably not a great idea, right? Or in the trees. So a minor change has a really big impact. And I know that you guys talk a lot about culture, and I know that it's a really important part of what you guys do. I would say that those were probably small incremental changes that over time, over the many years that Next Jump has been around, that has started to have a real big impact on what you guys have. And I'm frankly envious of the culture that you guys have built here. Let me talk about it from an entrepreneur perspective. You've built an online service someplace, and you've got a monthly fee of $200. Your customer's going to pay you $200 a month. But you've got churn. What that means is you've got customers who are going to leave you. You have customers that say, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. So let's measure what that churn is. How many customers leave you in a given month? Well, let's suppose that it's 5%. 5% of your customers decide every month, this isn't for me. You can bring in more people, but I'm not going to pay for it anymore. I'm not interested in the service. So what is the lifetime value of every customer? Well, a very common way of measuring lifetime value is that $200 fee divided by your monthly churn rate, and that's about $4,000. But what happens if you provided a little bit better customer service and you made some small product improvements and you kept the service running a little bit higher uptime, a little bit faster, just minor changes, because you got feedback from the customer and you figured out that, hey, I can bring my churn down to 2%. Not a big change. 2% of your, that means you kept 3% more people. Suddenly your lifetime value jumps to 10,000. If you brought this down to 1%, your lifetime value of that customer would be $20,000. That means you can completely change how you market to your customers, how you acquire your customers, how much money you spend to bring customers in, more money for your shareholders, more money for the summer parties,
outing,
for the summer outing and the things that you guys do from here, and you grow a bigger business. All right, a couple more things. How is this so far? Am I doing on time?
Yeah, maybe 15.
Okay, so let's talk about communication. So communication is really negotiation. Communication is negotiation. And I won't bore you with a big loop that says communication goes from one person, then goes to them, and has to come back. So I know I'm not just talking at you. The reason I actually said how am I doing here is I want to see how I'm doing. I'm looking at a few faces that are nodding. I'm seeing a couple people that are falling asleep back in the back there. I'm not reaching them, I don't think. But communication is negotiation. And one of the things I find fascinating about communication is, every company struggles with how do I tell the people in my organization the important things that I need them to understand. The leadership struggles with that. And one of the interesting things about communication is it's never the right amount of communication. It's either not enough, and people go, I have no idea what's going on around here. I just, nobody told me about that thing, and or it's too much. I get it. We've talked about this 6 or 7 times. It's too much. Nobody ever goes, boy, that was just really the right amount of communication. That was really just, perfect. That was great. It's difficult. And when you're in a really challenging environment of a startup, of being an entrepreneur, of being in the military, there is so much communication that happens real time. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with it with an air traffic controller? Well, the way you do it is you repeat things back. You get shortcuts. When this air traffic controller says, descend and maintain 5,000 feet, fly heading 360, what do I say? Roger that, descend and maintain 5,000 feet, fly heading 360. Because if I said descend and maintain 8,000 feet, he would say negative. Descend and maintain 5,000 feet. Roger that, descending to 5,000 feet, flying heading 360. It's fast, it's brisk. I'm not suggesting we do this in everyday life. How are you doing? I'm doing great. You're doing great? Okay, cool. I understand you're doing great. How am I doing? You're doing, I'm not suggesting you do that, but there are some shortcuts that you can do in your everyday life. And there are some things that the developers are doing when you deploy code. There are probably processes that you use where you're telling everyone I'm deploying this branch right now, I'm doing this thing. It's part of it is your reporting and the control mechanisms that you have for your executive team, reporting on revenue and products and things that you're doing there. But there are certain things. My team knows, I have a shortcut I use. My team knows that when I say, what we should do, we should launch that self-service product next Thursday, and they go, yeah, we'll see. My request is that you launch that self-service next Thursday. My team knows that when I say my request is, I'm actually saying to them, I'm really asking you to do this next Thursday. I'm not just making a suggestion. And there are really 3 responses I expect back from you. Either, yes, got it, I understand, and we can do that, or no, and here's why we can't do it, or renegotiation to say, actually, we can't do it on Thursday because it's not going to be ready. Let's do it the following week. And that's just a little bit of shortcut language that my team knows that's part of this. Communication is negotiation. And so, and they know that that's my sort of shortcut way to say, I want to make sure that you heard what I'm asking here. And it works really, really well. All right, use situational leadership. This is kind of a neat one. This is one of the things that Charlie and Meghan and I talked about on the very first night when we first met. This is probably one of the most valuable things that I learned in the military. And it's the idea that there used to be a concept that said that some leaders are people. They love the people. They're just going to really take care of the people. And how you doing? Everything okay? How was your vacation? Everything okay at home? What's going on? Are you comfortable? Kind of rub your back? Everything okay? Some people are real people, and then other people are, I'm just about the mission. I actually don't care how you feel about anything. Just get your job done on the mission. And so it's this original idea that you're either a people person or a mission person, and where do you sort of fall on that spectrum? And nobody is that hardcore one way or the other. You're somewhere in the middle, and you should be aware of that because that's your sort of leadership style. And so there were a couple guys, a guy named Hershey and Blanchard. Ken Blanchard, who's a well-known management theorist, who came up with this idea and said, actually, that doesn't really work. It doesn't work in all situations. And the best thing to do is to take a look at the situation involving your follower, involving the person that you are trying to lead right now, and look at where they are in terms of their commitment to the company and their skill level. And it's the idea here, and I'll just sort of walk through this really quickly. And for some weird reason, this graph always reads right to left, which I think is a little unusual. I would think it would read left to right. But it's the idea that you just showed up today on your very first day. Your very first day. You're really excited about it. I'm excited to be here on my very first day at Next Jump. Super psyched about the job. Can't wait to get started. But I don't know anything. I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to do. So what's the best way for me as a leader to help you to get better at what you're going to do? So you come up here, and this turns into a direction. This is all about directing. And the idea here is you really shouldn't waste time with, hey, how's it going? I know it's your first day here today. Everything okay? You comfortable? You this? That's not the most effective way to do it. The most effective way to do it is say, let me show you how to do your job. Let me get you started right here with this right now. Let me show you how to do your job right here. Let's talk about how to do this, and let's not spend a whole lot of time on the emotional and the supportive aspect of it. What does that look like? It looks like boot camp, right? It looks like boot camp, right? There's not a lot of love going around. There's not a lot of hugging. I just need you to do this way, because this is the fastest way for you to learn this. But very quickly, that can't last forever. That becomes demoralizing over time. That becomes something that's not effective over time. And what happens is you start to move, you as the follower start to move into this idea of, I'm pretty good at my job now. I don't need this dude yelling at me in my face like this. I don't need this guy right here yelling at me like that, because I'm actually pretty good at my job here. But I'm also starting to get a little frustrated because I'm not that great at the job, and I've now kind of figured out there's some things about the organization I don't really love, and I'm not as committed anymore to this right here. And you follow up here, and so how do you as a leader help your follower, help the people in your organization? This is what is called coaching. And coaching is what you think it is. It means I'm going to help you to get better at what you're doing. I'm going to help you with the mechanics of becoming more competent at what you're doing, but I'm also going to do a lot of love. I'm going to be supportive. How's it going? How do you feel about that? Does that make sense? Do you want to talk about it? Are you frustrated about it? Tell me more about it. This is the most expensive quadrant. Coaching is the most expensive quadrant. It's the one that says where I'm going to both help you to get better at what you're doing, but I also have to do a lot of support. It's expensive. And so the idea here is, where do we want to get people? We want to get people to where they have high competence and high commitment. They know what they're doing with the organization. They know how to fly the airplane. They know how to drive the sub. They know how to put out the marketing materials. They know how to ship the code. They know how to do whatever. And they're super psyched about doing it. This is what I do. This is part of my career. I want to get them to this level. So as people move here into this role, this is where they're good at their job. They're good at their job. But at the same time, sometimes they're kind of like, I'm kind of frustrated today. This isn't working out so well. I'm not really loving how this is working. And this is the one when you need people who want to come into your office and say, hey, can we talk about what's going on here? I'm kind of frustrated about this thing. I know what I'm doing. And what would be the wrong reaction? The wrong reaction would be like, well, just suck it up, just deal with it. Or oh, well, let me tell you how to do your job. I don't need you to tell me how to do my job. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed that this has happened. And so what you need there is you really need more supporting behavior. I need some help. And I don't need it all the time. It goes in waves. I've got guys on my executive team, and whenever somebody that I know that is really competent comes in and goes, I'm frustrated about this thing, I immediately go, where are you? Supporting. Okay, got it. I know you're looking for some help here, and I know you don't want me to tell you how to do it. The last thing you want to do is say, send the client over to me and I'll take care of it, because clearly you can't. That's the wrong approach to this. And finally, you got somebody who is highly competent and highly committed, you can delegate to them. And that's really what we want. We want to build new leaders. We want to build people who are able to do the job and are pretty excited about doing it. And think about this. If I said to one of my other execs, hey, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, but I've made a really long list of the 55 things I need you to do, and I need you to do them precisely like this, and I need you to call me every 5 minutes and make sure it's done. Like, how annoying is that, right? We've all experienced this. What that is that's a mismatch between what is happening here, and this is the quadrant that says I actually don't need you to tell me how to do my job, and I also don't need a lot of support. The other thing to be aware of is sometimes people backslide. Sometimes people backslide into these different quadrants. And sometimes I do need a little bit of support here. Sometimes I may call you on your vacation and say, I'm not really sure what to do. And by the way, I'm frustrated. This is a really lousy time to take a vacation, Jack. Can we talk about it? Okay, great. You're up in the supporting quadrant. Let's figure out how to do that. So, all right. I'm going to go a little bit faster here. I'll skip a couple of these really quickly. Aviate, navigate, communicate. This is the mantra for pilots. Whenever you see a movie, the movie says, and the airplane has a problem, what's the first thing the guy does in the movie? He reaches for the microphone and goes, Mayday, Mayday, I've got a problem up here. Your air traffic controller cannot help you. All right, that's all movie stuff. You should be flying the airplane, aviate, fly the airplane first. Then figure out where you're going. The last thing you need to do is communicate to people. Same thing in business. Fly your business. Drive your business first. Then you can figure out where, and make sure that you are keeping your people employed and that you're building a great product and doing the things that you're supposed to do. Then you can figure out where you're going with the business. Then you can tell the world about it. Here's a famous picture of a Concorde takeoff out of Europe. That guy's not calling the air traffic controller. That guy's having a bad day on takeoff, and he needs to fly his airplane first and then figure out where he's going to land. And what goes hand in hand with that is sound cool on the radio. So your business could be in real trouble. Your airplane could be in real trouble. It doesn't matter. Number one rule is sound cool on the radio. When you talk to the press, when you talk to your employees, when you're talking to the world, when you're in an airplane that's in trouble, sound cool on the radio. And hopefully this will show up for the folks remotely. You'll see a video here, but it's really about the audio. So who knows who that guy is? Sullenberger. It's Sully, right? Anybody know who he was? Yeah, everybody, all the New Yorkers, right? We talked about. Did he come and talk to you guys?
No.
Okay, because that would be awesome. He's a pilot's pilot, right? Let's listen to this here real quick.
700 landing 5,000.
Just listen to how cool this guy is.
Cactus 15.9, departure to contact line, maintain 15,000.
Maintain 15,000, Cactus 1549.
If the video fails, just listen. This is the air traffic control of the Hudson River landing.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539, hit birds, so you've lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures, got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529. Which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines. He said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. We can get it to you. Do you want to try to land 1013?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
All right, Cactus 15.9. It's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire, actually, LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound.
Hey, got it.
Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge, wants to go to the airport right now.
Going to the airport. Check. Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up here too, clocking about 7 miles. Eagle 5 4718, turn left thing 210.
210, 4718. I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
Cactus 15.9, Houston.
How cool was that? That guy sounded cool on the radio. Sully is a hero to every pilot everywhere. I mean, that's just, I'm going to put my airplane in the water and I'm going to sound cool doing it. Yes. So, and that applies to every part of what we're doing. You know, there's going to be things and that doesn't mean you can't be honest with people. I mean, you can hear that there's fear in there, there's concern, there's people doing a lot of stuff. But he was aviating first, then navigating, and then communicating last, and he sounded cool doing it. It doesn't mean you can't be transparent with your employees. It doesn't mean you can't be transparent with your investors. But it does mean that when you talk to them, you can still be cool about it. You can say, look, we're struggling here. Here's the problem. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we're going to figure it out. It does mean when you talk to the press, you can be cool doing it. All right? So I like that one a lot. By the way, I sat next to Sully on an airplane one time. First of all, what's that guy doing back in coach? If you're on my airplane, you're up in first class. But he was a total awesome guy, and I enjoyed chatting with him quite a bit. Last couple slides. Sometimes low tech is better. We're all about high tech. This is literally what I used to fly with. This was a hand-drawn route where I would draw, all right, here's 2 roads, here's the church right there, here's a river over here, here's some power lines right here. I would hand draw these, and I flew with that right on my strap to my knee right there. And that was my low-tech solution, even though I had a GPS and an INS and moving maps and all kinds of other cool stuff. Sometimes low-tech is better. Invest in training. This is going to be near and dear to you guys' heart. So again, training can sometimes look like that. Training can sometimes look like that. That was my training and what that looked like right there. But a lot of times it looks like this. It looks like this right here, right? This is training. I know you guys invest massive amounts in training, and it really pays off. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Learn how to learn. You're always learning here. I know we got a lot of young folks here on an internship today. Learn how to learn. Learn how to learn. You think you've learned it all, you haven't. Everybody in the room here is still learning so much, and be open to, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to learn it, and it's going to require repetition. Whether that is flying an airplane, whether that's skiing, whether that's learning how to play the guitar, whatever it looks like, whatever it is, learn how to learn, and be open to the idea that learning is not easy and it's not fun. But once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. You don't forget how to ride a bike. You don't forget how to swim. But it was really hard to figure that out from there. Now, some skills are perishable. I can't fly that T-38 or C-130 anymore. I fly a small airplane now. Those skills are perishable. I probably can't play the piano the way I used to. I may not be able to swim as fast as I used to, but I've learned it, and I know how I could also get better at all those things. And you've probably seen this book by Malcolm Gladwell that basically says once you've practiced something for 10,000 hours, you're going to get really good at it. Less than 10,000 hours, you're going to be just okay. Read the checklist. I'll skip that one, just in the interest of time. A couple more. Do I have 2 more minutes?
Yeah, go into some Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, got it. If they're shooting at you, you're doing something right.
Primarily,
You guys have probably all seen the video from Desert Storm. If they're shooting at you, you're doing right. I've had some people with the company that I'm doing that is being very disruptive to the translation industry write some of the most obnoxious, insulting, offensive things about me, about little old me. I woke up on a Saturday morning and had some blogger over in Europe who wrote a 15-page article about the most absurd things on the planet about me, and that's concerning. And you wake up and go, what the hell just happened? I'm trying to just enjoy my Saturday morning with my family, and some guy does it. But I've got to remember that sometimes if you're shooting at you, you're doing something right. I think I've got 2 more. Leaders build new leaders. You guys are doing this better than just about any company I know. As a leader, your responsibility is to build new leaders. Don't be afraid to hire people that are smarter and better than you are, and then help to build them into new leaders. It's one of the most important things about leadership. I know you guys do it. And finally, another one that you guys do really, really well: take care of your people. People are really, truly the most important asset in the company. Take care of your people. The military is so good at doing this, taking care of people, and this is really the number one thing. So. That's it. Let me just ask David really quick. Anything you disagree with there, David?
That's all right on. Except for the whole airplane.
Yeah.
Underwater.
Not enough sub pictures.
Yeah.
Not enough sub pictures. All right. Thank you, guys.
I think we'll take a few questions. If you guys want to write down a question on the note cards that you have in front of you, and then people will start San Francisco. We'll take maybe one from each office. So San Francisco, we're going to start London, Boston, and then maybe
participant lines unmuted.
One from here, and then one from Mirage in the back. So I guess 5 questions if we can.
Sorry that was long, guys. I realized I went way over time there.
That's great. So San Francisco, do you guys want to ask a question, or if you have one?
Sure. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Hi, yes.
Okay, cool. There was one slide where we were talking about the monthly service fee and the monthly
Yes, I think we lost you.
to us for, that makes sense for calculating the lifetime value. In that sense, if there's a monthly subscription fee, what happens? Like, so right now in our office, we're looking at generating revenue from mobile, and usually people we're finding aren't necessarily purchasing on a regular basis. So how do we figure out the lifetime value of, say, a mobile user, and how do we increase that value over their lifetime?
Got it. So this is strictly a product and pricing and entrepreneurship sort of product marketing discussion here. So It really depends. Are people buying that product on a on a continuous enough basis that you can measure it and that you can say on average over a year every person makes 3.5 purchases on average, and what's the average purchase that they're making there, and then you can ascribe that lifetime value. If you know that people are going to become a customer and that generally they become a customer for 14 months and then they leave, on average, some are there for 50 months, some are there for 2 months, but on average they're there for 14 months and you know that they're paying you $10 a month, you know your lifetime value is $140. If they're always a customer and they're just they never really kind of churn out, then you can use that churn definition to figure out sort of approximately what the lifetime value is. So I don't know the specific answer to the question. You may also find out that your mobile app, nobody's buying something, but it's adding more value to your brand, to the convenience, the product experience, and that might actually be the small change that causes more people to stay with you longer and to pay you more money, and ultimately to increase their lifetime value. I hope that makes sense.
Great, thank you. And London, do you guys have a question?
Hey, so just going on what you were saying about the unknown unknowns, how do you train people to prepare for unknown unknowns?
Yeah, so that's a really difficult thing to do, but I think most people say whenever a black swan, an unknown unknown occurs, people go, well, why didn't we think of that? It wasn't a failure of preparation, it was a failure of creativity, right? So the way I think about it is I start to think about what are the things that would really make my life more difficult? What are the things that would make my life more difficult with a competitor that might be bought by somebody else? What are the things that if somebody were to do this in the industry, it would really cause me real problems there? And then how do you do it? How do you deal with that? And frankly, it's really, really hard. And I recommend reading that Black Swan book because it's really, really terrific. There's also one about ballet dancing. That's also a good one, but that's a different one. But I would recommend reading it because I think what you'll find is it will start to open your eyes to some things that maybe you could do some preparation on and that might help. The other thing is, if you figure out how to protect against an unlikely scenario happening, you probably won't get credit for it either. That's the other thing, is that you're going to take certain steps. People go, how likely is that going to happen? Okay, great, we did that, we spent some money, we did whatever, but you may have actually saved the day there. You may have actually solved the problem. The book talks about that too. What else?
In Boston?
All right, we have one question. If entrepreneurship is like jumping off a cliff and building your airplane on the way down, how do you choose the right co-pilot?
Great question. I have a co-founder, and I like having a co-founder that I can bounce ideas around, and we tend to sort of supplement each other in certain ways. And there's lots of people that talk about who the right co-founder is in this. Some people say, do the 3 a.m. test. If you call your co-founder and he or she is happy to take your call and say, hey, what can I help you with? That's probably a pretty good co-founder. There's probably a lot of other things. My co-founder and I have been through a lot together in building this company over the last 3.5 years. Some ups and downs. And I think I think just sort of knowing that you're both in the same trench, to use another, military euphemism, you're both in the same battle. That probably goes a long way. But I would definitely recommend pick the right co-pilot, pick the right co-founder, pick the right person that you're working with, pick the right spouse. All of these are things that if you pick the wrong one, it can become expensive and problematic.
Thank you. And then one from Mirage, let's see, the group in the other room. Do you guys have a question? Anybody from Beth Ann's team or anybody else?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay.
Hi, I had a question about the Black Swan. I was just curious, what was the most challenging Black Swan that you faced at Smartling?
I don't know that we have faced one yet. There's a couple that I'm thinking about that could happen. I'm not going to tell you what they are. There's a couple I've been thinking about that could happen, and there's probably 30 that I haven't been creative enough to think about yet. I think one of the things that has surprised me is we're the small upstart that's been trying to disrupt a $34 billion industry. Now we've raised a lot of money and we've gotten a lot of press. We've built a great product. We've got great customers. So we're starting to be successful at that. I think the most surprising thing to me that I did not anticipate is that now we've got a whole bunch of little ankle biters that are coming up that are trying to disrupt me. And I keep looking at that going, really, guys? Like, there's this whole $35 billion market out here. Why not focus on those guys, not me? I'm on your side here. So what they look like is they look like Smartling clones. They look like they've taken one slice of what Smartling does, and they've said, I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to be 10 times cheaper. Now they're 100 times lousier. It's inferior products for the most part, but they could get better. But that surprised me when I get a Google alert that's got Smartling in it, and it's somebody else going, well, we're the Smartling for the everyman. We're the cheap version of Smartling because they're super expensive. And and I kind of go, really, guys? That's weird. That's probably the most surprising thing to me. And I've got and by the way, it's really hard to fight down. It's easy to be the David going after the Goliath. You can make a lot of noise. You can, but it's really hard to be the company that's raised 20 to $40 million, fighting against a tiny little startup of 2 or 3 people. You end up just sounding like kind of a jerk. So you just have to kind of find other ways to deal with them.
Is there a question from in here? Oh. You can just ask it. Go ahead.
You said that you've learned a lot about business from the military. Is there anything that you think the military could stand to learn from business, or is it all the other direction?
Oh no, it's absolutely both directions. And when I was in the service, a big part of this was the total quality TQM movement. Quality like Six Sigma, the Toyota process. I don't know that we did it quite the way we should have. It started to get a little funny, like, who's your customer? Well, my customer is the Army guys jumping out of my airplane, I guess. I got to keep them happy. And there was a little bit odd, but for the most part, the general idea of take processes that work, measure them like crazy, look for ways that you can improve on those particular processes, educate everybody around doing that, and then make that a best practice and repeat and get better and better at that. That all came from Toyota and what's his name, Arthur Deming, and the TQM movement. So that's just one example of a million. The military is really good on reading lists and education, and it's definitely not parochial in its thinking about this. It's more than happy to look outside and say, is there a better way of doing this? Probably all these things came from business, frankly. What do you think, David? You agree?
It's good because it's crucible because people die if you don't do it right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I don't think we're good enough. We don't tap the resources of the business community well enough. I mean, the guys in the military needs to be more.
I agree with that.
Especially when you think about a bunch of things, but anyway.
Yeah.
Risk and how you think about risk.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you. And
Thank you.
thanks for coming.